From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. This is Astrid Agbayani for your 12 o'clock news update. Today, BC Minister of Health Adrian Dix and Dr. Ramneek Dosanjh have announced the province's new optional payment plan for doctors to combat the shortage of family doctors. Under the revamped payment model, a full-time family doctor will make about $385,000 a year, up from the current $250,000. Kiara Collins reports.
BC doctors will have an option to be paid differently starting February 2023. Doctors can switch from a fee-for service, which is the current payment model that pays doctors a flat rate per patient and visit. According to officials, the alternative goes away from this model and pays doctors by the amount of time they spend with their patients, the number of times they visit them, the total number of patients in their practice, and the degree of medical complexity for those patients. This strategy is to help current family doctors and encourage them to stay in the field, as well as recruit new graduating doctors into the family medicine practice. Kiara Collins, 1680 The Crow.
With Halloween activities like trick-or-treating across the region tonight, ICBC is encouraging drivers and pedestrians to always expect the unexpected to avoid unnecessary scares. Jacob New has more.
640 crashes and 240 injuries across BC. Those are the numbers reported by ICBC from last Halloween. The Crown Corporation hopes that they see a decline in the amount of driving incidents tonight. ICBC spokesperson Greg Harper says that speed is the most important factor that drivers must keep in mind while driving in residential areas with tons of kids and parents walking about.
A vehicle that is traveling 30 kilometers an hour needs roughly about 18 meters to stop, and that's the length of 4 cars. Managing your speed is critical for drivers.
He also encourages trick-or-treaters to be reflective with their costumes and for pedestrians to be responsible in where they walk, using crosswalks, sidewalks, and facing traffic to ensure everyone can see each other. Jacob New, 1680 The Crow.
We are now joined by reporter Jacob New for more. Jacob, is ICBC expecting an increase in potential accidents with tonight's celebrations coming with no COVID restrictions?
Well, Astrid, in my talk with Greg, he did share that last year was a recent high for vehicle incidents on Halloween. There were some restrictions in place in 2021, including the BC vaccine card, but that did not prevent neighborhood trick-or-treating from taking place. He says they do hope to see a decline overall today.
What other important tips are they sharing in preparation for tonight?
Outside of speeding, ICBC notes that the biggest factor contributing to pedestrian accidents involves distracted driving. They want all drivers to leave their devices alone while behind the wheel. They're also encouraging those driving to have patience, as you may not see the hazards that cars in front of you are acknowledging. Astrid?
Thank you, Jacob. A confidential RCMP review calls for a fundamental shift in the security culture of the National Police Force to be led at the highest levels. Brenda Molina Navidad reports.
The review was completed a year after the 2019 arrest of a senior employee for allegedly leaking classified information. Cameron J. Ortis, who was then Director General of the Force's National Intelligence Coordination Center, is accused of violating the Security of Information Act by allegedly revealing secrets to an unnamed recipient. It prompted RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki to order the review. The resulting report was only recently disclosed to the Canadian press in response to an access to information request. The report makes 43 recommendations, including training updates, stricter adherence to federal security screening standards, and the possible introduction of random physical searches. Brenda Molina Navidad, the Canadian Press.
Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem says he has felt no threat to the institution's independence amidst the criticism it's receiving. In an interview with the Canadian Press, the governor says the bank's independence takes extraordinary steps to restore price stability.
I do not have any concerns about the bank's independence being under threat. I think yes, we're getting lots of tough questions. People should be asking us tough questions, but I have felt no threat to our independence.
Macklem says the Bank of Canada is facing tough decisions in the face of high inflation, and when decisions are difficult, the central bank's independence becomes more important. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly are among the key signatories to an open letter decrying Iran's record on women's rights.
The letter, published in Sunday's New York Times, calls for Iran to be removed from the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. It says the country, which began a 4-year term on the commission earlier this year, should have been disqualified for its long-standing systemic oppression of women. The letter also condemns Iran's violent crackdown on recent protests. 6 weeks of demonstrations in Iran were sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman who was arrested for allegedly failing to properly cover her hair and died in police custody. Former Prime Minister Kim Campbell and human rights activist and author Nazanin Afshinjam are the other Canadians on a list of key signatures to the letter. Brenda Molina Navidad, The Canadian Press.
That was your 12 o'clock news update. Astrid Agbayani for 1680 The Crow. And now for some sports update. A House of Commons committee will conduct a new study on the physical and emotional health and safety of women and girls in sports. This was voted unanimously on Monday by the House of Commons Status of Women Committee. It's the latest since the Heritage Committee's probe on Hockey Canada in July. This study will take on a broader scope, looking into women in various sports. Maggie McNeil of London, Ontario, finished the women's 100-meter butterfly in 54.78 seconds at a FINA World Cup in Toronto to set a Canadian record and finish top of the podium. McNeil is the winner for overall points for women. She says she was happy to compete in front of hometown fans.
It means so much to have their support, and it's been great to have them cheering in the crowd this weekend.
Canada finished with 5 golds, 9 silvers, and 7 bronze at the World Cup, second only to the United States. The Toronto Raptors will be hosting the Atlanta Hawks tonight in both teams' 7th game this season. Raptors star Pascal Siakam has started the season on fire, averaging career highs in points, rebounds, and assists. On the other side of the court, Trae Young has also had a hot start to the year, averaging 31 points and 10 assists, while leading the Hawks to a 4-2 start to the year. For Toronto, Otto Porter Jr. remains out of the lineup for personal reasons. The World Series is returning to Philadelphia for the first time since 2009 tonight. The Phillies are host to the Houston Astros for Game 3. The forecasted rain may be a dampener. Philip Fanatic Mascot and Philly fans are expected to have fun with the game being played on Halloween night, though. Noah Syndergaard is starting for the Phillies against Lance McCullers Jr. Lionel Messi is back in supreme form just in time for the World Cup. The Argentina forward has scored 12 goals in his last 10 games for his club and his country. This is his best performance since joining Paris Saint-Germain after leaving Barcelona. The stats speak for themselves. He has 7 goals in the French league, and that is more than he had in his entire first season at PSG. He has 4 goals in 4 games in the Champions League and 9 goals in his last 3 games for Argentina.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Teresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
I'm Jasper Chu, a host for 1680 The Crow. Today on our companion call, we're going to be discussing the issue of international students here in Canada. As you know, inflation has reached record highs in the past year, especially after COVID-19. Economists say we're due for a recession, but that aside, international students actually make up a huge portion of Canada's growing economy. But the challenges they face are incredibly daunting, from socially integrating to finances to holding down a job and balancing it all. I have two individuals with me today who can speak about their experiences they faced as international students coming to Canada. The first is Daniel Tucker, a former international student at Farley Dickinson University, who's currently a systems administrator for the Network Music Group, and Zarif Arab, a former international student at Capilano University, who currently works as a trust services officer at Canada Western Trust. You two, welcome on the show.
Thank you for having us, Jasper.
Thank you.
So, the first point I wanted to touch on is most international students see coming to Canada as a stepping stone to permanent residency. What made you guys want to come to Canada, become an international student and work up to permanent residency?
I guess the fact that there was an opportunity to come here, and from this process you can get into a better opportunity even faster compared to what others have to do, like finding a job in their home country. Perhaps the standards are not up to what the standards are in North America, so it feels like it might be a bit more difficult. But basically, it's kind of like that. It's a fast way to get into an economy you already know is good.
Also, I think we have to consider that coming from the country that we are coming from, there's a lot of people there, right? So there's a lot of competition to get into positions and get opportunities that you really want to do. So maybe it might be a little bit easier here in Canada, in a way. Like financially, you will have a better lucrative chance than you would have in India, for sure.
And you guys were from the state of Gujarat in India. Just briefly describe what were conditions like there in terms of like trying to search for a career, secure post-secondary education, and get like a good job. Like, was it like very competitive? Was it opportunities very little? Just briefly describe.
So I would not say that the opportunities were little. There's an abundant amount of opportunities there, especially the career I was looking for, which was in computing. Basically, Gujarat, the city Ahmedabad, has been one of the IT hubs of India, and there's been a lot of companies that have been come up from there or are resident there. But the thing is, the competition there is like a lot. And how the process basically works is basically you get a degree, and then you get a job basically through your college. And I would also like to add, like the state of Gujarat, we considered ourselves as a state of merchants. So there are a lot of people doing businesses there. So that was like always a second option to us. A lot of people that live in Gujarat do have their own businesses. So it was either you get in a good school and get in a good company, or you go for your business that either your family owns or you start one up by yourself.
I see. So what's it been like for you guys to prioritize both having a part-time job and then going through secondary education? Because I take that could be a lot actually to balance on your plate, especially. So can you just speak to that? Like what it was like for you guys?
For me, as being a student full-time and, working part-time, I felt like since I actually graduated back in India, so I've studied, I know what I'm studying, I have like a better grasp at the concepts than some other students here might have who are still studying or not yet studying. So basically I felt like I was qualified to do some of the jobs that were here available, dependent on what kind of educational credential I have. But unfortunately, because of legal restrictions like working part-time, I had to do other kinds of jobs, basically. So I worked at a recycling unit. I was picking up bottles and plastic bottles and stuff like that, labor work. And then I worked at a restaurant as a dishwasher, where I met some really awesome people, bro. But yeah, so basically it was like that. It was just kind of like study when you had to study and work whenever you had time to earn some money. That's it.
And what was it like balancing that with schoolwork and then going to classes? Like, did it take a lot of energy out of you? Did you have very little time for yourself? Like, describe, what is it like balancing it day to day?
I feel like for like me and for like Dwanil, because we're already graduates, we've actually...
Like when you held the part-time job and while you were attending school at the same time?
Yeah, no, I'm speaking to that.
Okay.
So it's like we've already done a lot of the things that we've learned here already. So it's like, it's like our whole undergraduate degree was like a warm-up, and then this was the race, and we did well in the race. You know what I mean? It's like I already know a lot of the things that I've had to learn here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's honestly, it's if you choose to focus a little, you can get really good at it if you want to, but it's not like it's the end of the world if you're not good at it.
To frame it in a different way, I would say that what he's trying to impose is that the education that we get back home is much more competitive, much more taxing than the education system here. Like the system here much more helps us in the way that we think and in the way that we learn, because we are used to learning 6 to 7 different courses a semester, and then you come here and you're learning like 3 or 4 for your masters. That also those subjects are deep, that's another thing, but still you have the concepts back from home when you're doing like 6 and 7, so you're already used to doing a lot of schoolwork, and then here the load of school, I would say, gets lesser and lesser compared to what we had back home. And then you add on to that the part-time jobs that we did. I started working in a restaurant, funny enough, in the food business. And it's a day-to-day, I would say, was more like, I would not consider it for day-to-day, more like a week-to-week was the whole schedule, because you would be like going to school like 4 to 5 days a week, and then you also be working like 4 days a week at least. And it would be like you would be juggling from either you go to class and then you directly go to your work, or you go to work and then do a class, or you do your work in between your classes. Yeah, it was a crazy couple of years, but I think what we get at the end of it, the benefit, the rewards are better or are worth it, I would say.
So what were some personal or financial sacrifices you guys had to make to like pay rent, afford the cost of living, and pay tuition? Like, I know back in 2019, 2018, inflation isn't as high as it is now, but you guys must have had your own story to tell with regards to this issue. Like, what challenges or issues did you face?
I think there was a big shock I got when I came to Canada, because there's one thing that a lot of people don't know, that we have the opportunity, as he said, to come here. We are like one of the most privileged people back home, right? It's not like we are coming from somewhere that we don't have enough amenities, basically, right? So when we come here and we try to fit into this new economy, which is much more powerful than ours, then suddenly our standard of living, what we had back home, degrades to a very lower level here. And then that's why I think that's what's like a big shock that you just get, because back home the picture that's printed into your head about going overseas or going to Canada is that you are going to have a much better standard of living. But when you come as a student, initially the first 2 to 3 years, whatever you're studying for, is not a very great quality of life. And I think a lot of it may be due to the working restrictions, because you can't make money here, and if you bring money back from home, that's like the conversion is crazy, and then you're spending a lot more money back home than you're supposed to.
For you?
Could you repeat the question, please?
What kind of like personal or financial sacrifices you had to make to like come to Canada, and what issues or challenges you faced in doing so?
I feel like Dhuanil said, we're very privileged. I'm very privileged. I had a father who paid for all of it, basically, like a huge portion. Like, if I had to work for it back home, I'd probably been working there. I'd have a job, and then I'd kind of be like Yusuf, where I'm already like super qualified to be here and work awesomely. But I didn't do that. Instead, because my father was there, he wanted me to have the easier opportunity, and he let me come here. So that's like one of the things I had to deal with coming here.
you guys mentioned the issue with regarding work requirements and sending money back home. How has that how has that impacted you and your families in some ways?
So I would say it hasn't.
Or how has it impacted your livelihood with the work requirements, work restrictions they currently have on international students?
So the 20-hour work restriction, basically when I was back here in 2019, the minimum pay was about $12.50 or something like that, a little bit more than that, I think. And then I would say I was making about $1,100 here living in Vancouver. And that's kind of tough if you think about it, because $1,100 in Vancouver is not a lot. The rents here are crazy. The cost of living is very high. I was sharing an apartment with 4 people. And then you have to let go on occasional recreational activities, right, for a few years, because all your money is either going to rent or either going to food or all other things. And spending money back home was never an option for me when I was studying here, when I was basically a student. But now that I've finished studying, I think I help out my family back home, sending some money, and I'm sure they appreciate it. Probably doesn't make a big difference to them on their day-to-day basis, but it's surely something that adds up to it.
And Zarif?
Yeah, I'd say the same. I feel like when I was earning like part-time, whatever I would get, I felt like because I had like some assistance from before, I was able to go through it more smoothly. Otherwise, I'd feel like I really wouldn't have saved much. And then I'd take some time just to pay off what I learned, like the cost of studying. And for us, it's like sometimes 3-4 times as high for some reason. So it feels like we're starting with less and we're being charged more.
Yeah, Vancouver is actually among the second most expensive city in Canada and one of the most expensive and a top 10 most expensive in North America. You'd basically have to be a millionaire of some kind in order to rent comfortably here. So adjusting to Canadian culture, what was your experiences like becoming familiar with Canadian style English, the Canadian mentality, being around like students who are natively born here? What was it like culturally adjusting to being in Canada?
I think for us, it was kind of like we're from very different cultures. I know it, and you also know it, but like the West has a more known culture in like our parts of the countries, but you guys probably wouldn't have as much knowledge about our culture, right? So we were already prepared for that in a sense. Watching a lot of movies, I think all of us kind of got the accent part down. Yeah, no, seriously. But apart from that, I feel like we're like Indians. We speak like British English to an extent, and that's like the proper English. And we're like probably among the most like populated English speakers on this planet. So like for us, we already have like actually a good level of English knowledge.
So with your experiences as your experiences with Canadian-born students, has there been like any positive or negative interactions, any major issues you noticed in interacting with Canadian students at all that you feel need to be addressed or need to be highlighted?
I would say yes, but not in a bad way. Like, I think Canadians are awesome for what people they are. I think they're very humbling, very warm and accepting. And I have had a few interactions at school. I've had some professors that were like Canadian, and they have always been nice to me. And this country, I think, is a country of not Canadians, but you can say a country of immigrants. And I pretty much agree to the idea of letting anyone and everyone come here, have the opportunities. And that's another thing that Yusuf was talking about. What I like about Vancouver is the multicultural society of people that are here, and then we bring something back, something of our own back from our home for everyone to share with, and I think that's beautiful.
Beautiful. Has there been like any instances of like discriminatory or prejudiced behavior you've experienced, and what was your like first person impression and experience of that, and what are some like the most common discriminatory actions or attitudes that have been put against you guys when you were international students here? Because, as you know, there's a huge uptick now in Asian hate crimes, South Asian, East Asian hate crimes. So what's your guys' experience with this? What have you witnessed? What's the most common type? What's like a recurring trend?
I think I would say the most common type that I think I can say this maybe for all international students, everybody maybe at some point does experience some sort of exploitation, because the people that are here for longer, or the people who know how things work and how immigrants are, basically the people who work with immigrants a lot know what kind of framework of their mind is, and they know how it can be used. So we come from a country where everything is very competitive. We like to work hard because we have to, right? There's no option. And then we come here, and then when people try to not give us either the same amount of respect as you would give a different person who's either a Canadian or even not a Canadian but been here like longer, has like a Canadian citizenship or whatever, and then they know that because we are students and we have this little hours and we don't get a lot of jobs here, because most jobs are not allow you to work more less than 40 hours. So they know that these are the only few places where you can basically work, and they know you need them. So there is obviously I think some kind of exploitation that happens at all levels, and I think I've experienced that a fair bit.
Zarif?
To be very narcissistic, I feel like I'm too charming to be discriminated against. No, honestly, I think I'm like one of the few who don't really get to experience that. Like, some people get it much worse. I've seen it happen with some people. That hasn't happened to me as of yet. But I feel like those instances when that does happen, it really happens like in a really wild situation where there's complete inappropriateness. But apart from that, like if you're well enough, if you stay well enough, you can express your ideals freely and you can do it calmly. And honestly, I feel like, I didn't really have much of an encounter with Canadian students because everyone in my course was like an international student and half of them were Indians. So we already knew how things were from the get-go. But we didn't really we weren't all interconnected. We were we'd meet up for class, we'd have our own groups and stuff, because you're just too busy and it's tough to just get along with everyone because everyone has very busy lives.
Yeah, and the social aspect of if you get to it, the social aspect is, it's tough because you can't really make friends because you have these crazy schedules. You're running around classes, you're running around work. So the social life obviously takes a toll, I would say, yeah.
And we have about 2 to 3 minutes left, if I'm correct. What do you guys think needs to change with regards to how international students are assisted by the provincial and federal governments going forward? Because you guys brought up some pretty good issues, exploitation by employers. What else? Those were one of the issues, and also working hours. What do you think needs to happen going forward? What do you think changes need to be made to better accommodate international students' living situation?
I think it's a tough call, if I would say, because right now, I don't know if you know, but the news is from November 15 for a year, they are letting students work more than 20 hours. And I kind of, they say it's because of the inflation and they need the workforce, but I think it's a tryout to see how things work. But it's tricky because if you let students work for 40 hours, then what's a possibility is that students migrate here just for work and not actually for studying. I think that's a tough situation because if I don't know right now, but looking back, if I had 40 hours to work, I would be probably studying less because I needed that money at the time. So I think maybe more to see in terms of how the costs can be reduced, or they can be given some kind of a subsidy to help out with school or something like that. I don't know, but yeah.
I feel like if they didn't charge international students more, and if we didn't have this working restriction on us, we would probably be able to pursue certain opportunities that would otherwise be available to us, or we could pursue in a manner of speaking, but we are not able to because people don't prefer students as employees. For us, we have restrictions, so there's this whole legal aspect. And also, I think there's kind of this belief that you need to have Canadian experience. However, I feel with the experience that I've had in India, I think it's more than enough. Like,
It's far more I would say it's far more beneficial to companies here that we have experience back home because we know different processes and different workflows.
I feel like
Yeah.
coming here, you're a more focused person. You don't really care about all these things that are happening sometimes. You just want to like, I want this, I want that, I need this, I need that, and you're doing that, you're focusing on that, you're not worried about these external issues that much.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show today. This is a very pressing issue, and having your guys' perspective is very invaluable to this ongoing discussion about how to fix it. Zarif, Dakar, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you guys have a great evening.
Thank you, Jasper. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
I dream a lot about the day that my family will arrive here in Victoria. And I just dream about showing them around, about this place that became my home. Looking back to that moment, I could not bear the fear in my mom's eyes. The sponsors are gonna be playing a big part in supporting my family after they arrive to Canada, to give them a sense of home and community.
So I went to a meeting with Tam and the sponsors at the Intercultural Society, and when I learned the amount of money that needed to be raised to bring his mom and his two sisters here, I was shocked. I was shocked, upset, thinking, why does it have to be so much?
We have formed a sponsorship group of 12 amazing individuals and supporters who reside here in Victoria on the island. And we work with ICA, who's a sponsorship agreement holder. They work in coordination with the Canadian government. And these organizations are giving number of seats every year to sponsor refugees. We're so lucky to get a seat finally after 5 years.
You know, his family is just at a risk. I have no idea how he manages each day with his mental health. It's actually amazing how he keeps it together.
He's such a hard worker. He's been working. I know that he's been not only doing that, but school on top of it and doing exams, and he blows my mind.
You know, we don't appreciate how good we have it here in Victoria. You know, we live in a very wealthy place, a very safe place, and now we know with Ukraine, like that was thought to be a safe place too, and now it's not safe. Syria was once thought to be a fairly stable, safe country to live in.
I just can't believe the circumstances they have to survive each day compared to even third world other countries that are out there. It's a whole different level of struggle in places like Syria.
We had met on Zoom last week, I think, with his two sisters and his mother, and they are really beautiful people, and they live in appalling conditions right now in Lebanon. They're illegal refugees. They're not allowed to work. They can barely put food on the table. They get by on what TAM can send them in terms of money.
There's been quite a few hard days where he just wants to chat with them, and until that moment happens, he has that fear in him of, like, are they still there? Are they still breathing? And that's a reality for him every hour, every day.
اوكي عادي. كيفكم صباحو؟ صباح الخير. هاي يا مامي. كيفك يا قلبي؟ اشتغلتم، كيفكم انتو؟ هاي ماما، كيفك؟ I left Syria, there was like an attack from all around the city, from different parties. And I wasn't sure if I would make it, you know, out of there alive or not. Around that time, like, it was really harsh. We had over like 40 missile attack on the city within like 2 weeks. So it was really bad.
Maybe you need a nap, just go nap. Like a snooze. Like a minute nap, snooze.
But also like you plan a lot, so
I think you should have it.
And the mix. My mom taught me how to make Syrian bread. I used to just watch her make it every Friday or Thursday for the weekend.
So, what are you worried about? What are you worried about right now?
I want to just make sure everything lines up tomorrow morning.
You know, like the GoFundMe page, that's an online thing, and people, you know, can read the story and be inspired that way, but it's to put just the work of making the food and making the scarves and doing the art and people coming together and giving in this more concrete and creative way.
Are you excited for today?
Yes, it's finally happening. Been lots of planning and lots of preparation and just getting stuff done and lots of amazing friends and people helping. So I'm actually very excited. Not nervous at all, I would say. Just looking forward to just share my story with everyone. So we were just on our way to the souk. Like I had that feeling in my gut that don't go using that road. When I go, like I felt like strongly that we should use a different route to get there. And I was telling my mom, like we're almost arguing in the street, like no, I don't want to go there, let's take the other one. So I insisted. Not even a minute later, just hear a high pitch bombing. The buildings, the sky, the land felt like everything was shaking and everything was like crumbling like a piece of paper. And people were screaming, blood everywhere. It was really scary. Didn't know if my sisters were home. We didn't know if they are still alive or not. And then we're running and back to our house to see what happened, like if my sisters are okay or not. And the minutes felt like ages. Just like lots of mix of emotions, happy. Feels like home actually, with all the people, the love, really good.
All three of my daughters will be here today at one point or another, either as artists or organizers, and we all live in the same city and I see them frequently, and I just can't imagine being separated from my family as Tam is from his.
Who's never experienced any of these conflicts, how fortunate I am, and if there's some way I can help, it's nice to do so.
I knew it that home was no longer home. Maybe you can introduce you to one of our amazing artists, Hala, from Ukraine.
I have 3 pieces that I donated. One called Lights of Hope. I have my whole entire family in Ukraine right now, and we lost 2 family members already, and yeah, so, and being involved in camps, fundraising, it takes, like when you feel terrible, you need to focus on helping someone else. So your own pain will be less, right? So that's what I'm doing.
If I were in her situation and my son was across the world, I would be feeling, I think what she said, really concerned that he has people around him that would help him out. And that's what she said, like when we saw it, we talked to her on the video, and she was just so happy to see all the good energy that was around him. شعور صعب بينحكى حكي هذا الشعور
بناتها وعندها ابن وحيد يعني هو حياتها. يعني هي اللحظة اللي إني أنا بدي أكون جنب ابني، هي عم بحلم فيها بشوفها بمنامي.
Well, something I really like that my mom wrote me, and it just like always was always and like still stuck in my mind to this day. And she's the first page in this book is my mom. Yeah, and I always, for some reason, whatever my mom's write, I always write myself here, like in Arabic, of course, that I hope my mom lives forever and ever. My love, mom. Like always, like, and I sign it. It's like here. So that's my mom, and then here I did a heart with, yeah. So anyway, what she says in here, that life is like a train, and people in each station, they come to, like, you have new people coming and new people leaving. Some people are gonna be good, some of them might not be good, and she's saying, I really hope that your like life, or like your train, your life train is like filled with love and success.
Sold out. Yeah, sold out. Gone.
And you know, I always think, like, especially with food, is like, food is love. So I hope people go now, like, after they go home, they, you know, get to enjoy a meal made by us. And it was lots of learning, you know, like a good start, more to come.
I think we all did amazing teamwork. I booked off 2 of my shifts from the hospital so I can be here. But yeah, we all sacrificed time, but it's worth it. We're trying to do something beautiful and amazing, all in good hope and faith for Tam's mom and 2 sisters. And it'll be incredible once it all falls through and they're here safely.
They're awesome. Like, sort of like, they're more inspiring than I even expected. Like, they're so bright and hopeful and laughing and smiling and just really enchanting people. And it made me think, oh my goodness, what is, especially as sisters, what are they going to do when they get here? I think they're going to just really do awesome things and really contribute here. So I look forward to meeting them.
We just saw my sisters. They were like, they had minor injuries, but we were like crying, all of us, and we held each other and just like grabbed into them. Like it felt like we've lost them, and then we've got them back. That day I will never forget. Yeah, I will never forget that day.
We are
Being Gears.
That's cool. Fashion is the foundation of being gears, but I think it's also like one of the greatest factors that will even start discussion about being gears.
What makes this group so special is because like they have their own identity, you know what I mean? Everybody has their own personal styles. They have their own special talents and their own creative endeavors. And I don't know, it just, we're like the Avengers, dog.
Yeah, we're.
Who's who?
I'm like.
Black Widow.
I'm like Thor because I'm the strongest. And one of my biggest wishes is to, you know, work with a bunch of little gears so we can change a big group of gears and even affect the bigger gears out there.
All of us are so individually different that we fill gaps in all of us. So I feel like in that aspect, we're flawless. When we're having meetings, some of us are thinking so forward, and then you got other people like just grounding us a little bit. And even in just like the whole dynamic is flawless in that aspect. The lookbook's gonna be a showcase and also just an opportunity for us to get into the studio way more often. It's a very good starting ground for us to build our own portfolios and show people what we're capable of.
Yeah, something like this, I would say is pretty good for tote bag.
Yeah.
Like, it's not stretchy, it's sturdy. Fashion actually like brings out a character in you. You know, like when you're feeling good, when you're feeling fresh, you act totally different.
No Sharingan. It says Sharingan. What do you mean Sharingan?
Like my full name is like Nicholas. I never tell people, like I never introduce myself as that.
The most fulfilling thing that I can imagine out of gears is seeing other people form their own little groups because of us and just doing things. Like imagine some kids in middle school, high school being inspired to do the same things, even if they don't go anywhere with it. But to start it and just even think about it is super fulfilling.
I think we should all just be looking for ways to make money and get grants, get this. If we can get a $2,000 scholarship.
It just all goes back to the point of like looking good and feeling good, man.
It's as simple
you know,
as that.
It really is, man.
100%.
You know, if we can be like the poster childs for that, to try to promote, you know, that as much as we can.
So how are we gonna draw it though?
Fashion and music, there's like that culture, the culture aspect of it, it all comes together through music, through art, through clothing. It just, it's very cohesive in that aspect and it's all a part of it.
We gotta draw one for the first two items.
Okay, can we look at a calendar? Amazing.
I think video games for sure, because I used to be a big gamer. Now I have no time, but I used to be a big gamer, and I feel like the way that they build their character design is just through the roof. Like they make something that's out of this world, and I'm like, how can I take that and make it real life? I love Naruto. Just the silhouettes that they carry. It's like very, very, it's like drapey, still kind of on that like Asian, like the kimono type, like squared off sleeves, squared off hems, and cropped and like that type of thing. That was one of my big inspirations before. So I used to always wear like hella cropped stuff. Can I say that? Cropped stuff and like cropped pants and like oversized sweaters and stuff like that used to be my thing. And yeah, now it's just, I don't know. Now it's just anime all over, really.
Keep it straight so you see it's lined up. Keep it straight so it's lined up. Just from the positiveness, the light, the colors, everything. I think it's great, and that's what continued to inspire me.
We out here.
In the zoo cougar.
You know, this like motto of like looking good and feeling good, I feel like that's something you can live by.
Like, I feel like people always limit themselves in the ideas that they want to do and they never really pursue it. But if we can show that and like, hey, it's getting done by a bunch of kids, yo, that's community right there. You feel attachment to that. Anyone else can do this, but they're not. Who else is gonna do it with our positive attitudes? Who else is gonna do it with this welcoming? Who else? Who else but us? So I feel like this is always driving me because I'm just like, I wanna be that person that can connect.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, my name's Parmveer Kang, and here's your 1 o'clock news.
BC Minister of Health Adrian Dix and Dr. Ramneek Desange have announced the province's new optimal payment plan for doctors to combat the shortage of family doctors. It will increase a doctor's yearly salary from $220,000 to $385,000. Kiara Collins reports.
BC doctors will have an option to be paid differently starting February 2023. Doctors can switch from a fee-for-service, which is the current payment model that pays doctors a flat rate per patient and visit. According to officials, the alternative goes away from this model and pays doctors by the amount of time they spend with their patients, the number of times they visit them, the total number of patients in their practice, and the degree of medical complexity for those patients. This strategy is to help current family doctors and encourage them to stay in the field, as well as recruit new graduating doctors into the family medicine practice. Kiara Collins, 1680 The Crow.
Outgoing Surrey Mayor Doug McCallum has pleaded not guilty after being charged with public mischief. McCallum appeared at the BC Provincial Court today, only a week before he formally leaves office. He's been accused of making a false statement alleging a woman nearly pinned him against his car before she drove over his foot while he was at a Save On Foods parking lot in September of last year. The driver, who hasn't been charged, is campaigning for a group that opposes a municipal police force in the city. The Manitoba government is implementing a plan to reduce homelessness in the province. The plan sees funding rates for homeless shelters, transitional housing services, and homeless outreach mentors jump to $15 million from the current $6 million. Premier Heather Stephenson spoke on how necessary it is to address this issue.
A bus shelter is not an acceptable place to live. I'm confident that these initiatives will have a strong positive impact on individuals, their families, and our community as a whole.
On top of the $9 million being put forward, the Manitoba government will look to increase subsidies to make rent more affordable. The Canadian Union of Public Employees say that their roughly 55,000 education workers will hold an Ontario-wide protest on Friday. CUPE President Fred Hahn spoke on the education workers standing up for themselves and their rights.
So on Friday, regardless of what this legislation says, our members will be engaging in a province-wide protest. That means no CUPE education worker will be at work. Instead, we will be taking a stand for public education, for ourselves, for our future.
The Ontario government is attempting to stop this protest by introducing legislation to impose contracts and to ban a strike. Hahn says that they were in a legal strike position before the bill passed. With Breast Cancer Awareness Month coming to a close, the issues surrounding breast cancer should remain a relevant topic of discussion. ABC's Jim Ryan spoke to Portland, Texas Mayor Kathy Skuro, who's urging women to get their mammograms.
At the height of the pandemic, breast cancer screenings dropped by 55%, according to Quest Diagnostics. Kathy Skuro was among those putting it off until
that inner spirit told me it was time. Thank God I did.
Because when the results were in,
my mammogram came back irregular.
Stage 2 breast cancer. She's been successfully treated, but now Skuro, the mayor of the town of Portland, Texas, is pleading with her constituents to schedule their own screenings.
If it had not been for that mammogram, I may not be in the situation I'm in today.
Jim Ryan, ABC News, Dallas.
Indian police officials are investigating the collapse of a bridge that has killed at least 134 people. The bridge was just reopened days ago after 6 months of renovation. ABC's Inez de la Coutura has the full story.
A suspension bridge collapsing in India and plunging 33 feet into the river below. Police have detained 9 people as part of a criminal investigation into what has become one of India's deadliest accidents in the last 10 years. Video of the bridge right before it collapsed shows a group of young men taking photos while others tried to rock the bridge from side to side. The bridge reopened last week after repairs. Inez de la Coutura, ABC News, at the Foreign Desk.
Those were your news headlines for 1 o'clock. I'm Parmveer Kang for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.